to this edition of SVBU, Seniors Blue Book University. I'm Nancy Fenimore, and I'm the publisher of the Seniors Blue Book here in this beautiful state of Colorado. I'm very excited to bring our dynamic and experienced group of panelists here today, all experts in some capacity in the field of senior housing. Today, we're actually going to be discussing senior housing in particular. We'll, by the end, learn better about the levels of care in senior housing. And I'll expand on that in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce our panel. They'll be introducing themselves, telling us a little bit about themselves and the roles that they play in their respective communities. But first, I want to do a quick welcome to Shirley McNeff. Shirley is the Executive Director of the Bridge at Longmont, which is a life care centers community up in Longmont. And of course, Ralph Patrick. Ralph is Boulder County's Regional Director for the ever amazing Alzheimer's Association. And then Brian Miller is our community liaison for the Peaks Care Center and Frontier Therapy Centers, also in Longmont, Colorado. So first of all, welcome all of you. Really pleased to have you here with me, and thank you for extending your time today.
Thank you.
You bet. So let's go around the horn and learn a little bit more about each one of you. Shirley, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about Shirley.
Again, I'm Shirley McNeff. I have been in the industry for over 30 years. I've been at this community for 24, so it's been a love of my life. Just enjoy seniors, what they have to offer, the history that they're able to share with us. It's kind of like having a ton of grandparents that you can sit around and listen to all the stories, and it's priceless. So it's just something that I've loved and have enjoyed, and it's very easy to come to work when you enjoy what you do. So I'm very happy to be here.
So true. Well, welcome, and thank you again. Hey, Ralph, how you doing?
Hey, Nancy, I'm well. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Thanks for inviting me to be part of this.
Oh, of course. You know, we love the Alzheimer's Association. Everybody does. Just a wealth of information for everyone. So thank you, early on behalf of everything you do for us. So
thanks for that.
Ralph, tell us a little bit about your responsibilities.
So yeah, Ralph Patrick with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm the regional director for the Boulder, Mountain, and Western Colorado region, which essentially goes over to the Utah border. And I oversee programs and services for people with dementia as well as caregivers. I first was exposed to this disease in 1988, and then my mother got it in 2001. And so I've been on this journey both professionally and personally.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Brian, how about you?
Hi there, Brian Miller. I have been working in the senior living field for about 6 years, a little bit more than 6 years now. And I just love meeting with patients and their families, learning their stories. Much like Shirley said, it's great to learn their histories and kind of get to a point where you can help them in this time of need. There are a lot of stressors involved in this processes, and it's great to be able to help folks diffuse those and understand the benefits of all of these senior living elements and what they bring to the table. I really think that they help families, as we provide the caregiving, to kind of focus on the love. And that's really neat to see.
It really is. There's a lot to consider when it's this time, when it's time to move into community. It's not easy for anybody. There's a lot of things to consider. And so on that note, let's dive in and get started. As I mentioned, today's goal is to offer a kind of tutorial, I guess, for lack of a better term, of when to know it's time for that move into a care community. And to clarify, I do mean a care community, not so much an independent or retirement community, but more so a community that offers assistance, daily assistance of activities of daily living for their residents. Oftentimes, it's the senior themselves that's looking for this community, but especially when you get into memory care and to skilled care, it's often the adult child or the caretaker that's searching for the right community for their loved one. So on that note, let's learn a little bit about it. Shirley, I'm going to fire the first question at you. And real basically, what is assisted living?
And as far as what Nancy just said, it's really a place where an individual can come and have their independence, but be able to have assistance and things that they need. So many people, seniors in their home, give up a lot of stuff that we don't realize sometimes we take for granted. They're unable to cook for themselves, so they find themselves in front of a TV with a TV dinner because it was easier to put in a microwave. They're not associating with their neighbors anymore. So, you know, they don't have that interaction with different people. Some families, although they're very involved, some families aren't living in the same state. And so, you know, what they don't know, they don't know. Sometimes people are in denial that their parents need help, you know, that to take them to a doctor's appointment. So I think assisted living in general provides them with, again, that independence to be able to do those things and function as an independent, because they give so many things up. That allows them to still, you know, feel that they have worth in their life. I have a lot of people that I've talked to that, you know, that's one of the things. They just don't, they feel like everything is gone, so what's the point? And a lot of times in those conversations, I said, the point is, it's for us as much as you. I mean, we can learn as much from you as you can allow us to help you. So I just think there's a wide variety of opportunity there for our seniors that a lot of people don't realize.
Mm-hmm. So true. So Ralph, when I think about that, you know, when you decide that you need those services, what's the differentiation between selecting a memory care community over a more traditional assisted living community?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, a memory care community specifically caters to the person with dementia. So that's the first distinction. And I think what Shirley said is key. You know, an assisted living facility is just helping with some of the most basic needs that the person may have. But with a memory care unit, the needs are accelerated and elevated. Mm-hmm. So there's a need for more care for the person with dementia. Usually it's around the middle stages of the disease. So they need help with eating. They may not be able to, you know, even feed themselves or prepare food. They need help with bathing. They need help with dressing. They need help with meds. Oftentimes a memory care unit will provide programs and activities that are more conducive to the person with dementia, focusing more on cognitive stimulation as opposed to perhaps the physical activities that a person in an assisted living facility or independent living would engage in. Mm-hmm. For the person with dementia, there is a change in how they engage with others or a lack of engagement. It's pretty common during the course of this disease for the person to begin to isolate more. And so they might become less interested in being with others. And then, of course, the big one is always safety. There's the wandering issue that enters into the picture. About 60% of all people with dementia are going to wander at one point or another during this disease. There's navigating stairs and transitions. You know, again, the eyesight, the visual acuity changes for a person with dementia. So they can't necessarily navigate in the same way. They can't distinguish colors and transitions and what have you. And then there's the behaviors that can come into play, the change in sleep patterns, and even things like hallucinations that could affect how they're interacting with others or just simply how they're able to, you know, to function. In addition to the person with the dementia, I think it's important to take into consideration the caregiver. Because the caregivers oftentimes ignore their own health and well-being, and that's a really significant factor. It's not just a matter of when is the person with dementia ready, it's when is the caregiver ready, or when can't they continue to provide the kind of services and care that's required by their loved one. And the family, of course, enters into that too. The family worries about the person, and so transitioning into a memory care unit may put everyone more at ease.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but many, if not all, memory care communities have staff that are specially trained by groups like the Alzheimer's Association on
Right.
ways to navigate care for this, because it's a different ballgame.
Right, it is. Yep, exactly.
Okay, great. Well, Brian, So talk to me a little bit about when it's time to transition into skilled care. What's the difference between the assisted living element and then the skilled element, and even rehab, whether it be short or long term?
Okay. Yeah, so I think, there are multiple elements of skilled nursing to consider. One is the short-term rehab. Folks that may be living in assisted living or even a memory care for that matter, have a fall, wind up in the hospital, and either that or they've elected to do some type of surgery, and they're at the hospital and they're not fit to go back at that time to their assisted living, memory care, wherever it might be. So usually post hospitals, typically staying with in a rehab setting with us or whatever skilled nursing setting they're in for 7 to 10 days. That's an average. Sometimes it's more than that, and sometimes less. The therapy elements include physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. So all of those things to help them. So post-stroke victims might get more speech therapy than they get physical therapy. It just depends on the situation. And, a lot of this, and I'll talk about it later a little bit with the costs and so on, are related to insurances. And so sometimes the length of stay is driven by outside. It could be the insurance company or some other reason that person, qualifies to go back home to their assisted living. Post-stay in that type of setting, we're typically discharging folks home with home health. We, do a home evaluation. Those folks then, might go from an occupational perspective to the assisted living or to their home or wherever they might be, and evaluate the setting, make sure it's safe for them, and continue that therapy for a period of time so they know what to do at home, making sure that the atmosphere is safe. And then there's those who may be at that rehab, may not progress well enough or kind of take a downturn, and or in assisted living or memory care take a downturn and just need a long-term care setting. And that is basically just a higher level of care than what typically an assisted living or a memory care can provide. And there are secure unit skilled nursings where folks with behavioral aspects might need to go as opposed to being in one that's not. But definitely gives them that additional layer of support, more one-on-one attention, and folks that are more trained in that realm of memory care issues. So there are all kinds of ways that this can take place from a skilled nursing perspective. Long-term care typically means folks are going to stay with us through end of life, may transition onto hospice, and may at some point need to convert to a Medicaid type situation, which I'll talk about later as well.
Okay, great. And I would think there's also just some key indicators that someone has to move on from assisted living to skilled care, because state regulations are there's certain things that assisted living just simply cannot do. Full two-person transfers, trach care, that type of thing. So maybe we can touch on that in a minute. First, though, Shirley, I was thinking it would be nice to kind of let folks know that there really are, several different styles, if you will, of assisted living, large and small communities, and maybe you can share with us some of the differences between them, what's out there, and then maybe how best to suggest a family, what things to consider to try to find the right match for their loved one.
Right, and it isn't a one size fits all.
Right.
Families that come into our community, that's something that I tell them right off the start is if you're just starting to look, that's what you need to do is you need to look, you need to ask a lot of questions. You need to feel comfortable that listening to your best instincts is what is the best medicine. I mean, if you go somewhere and you don't have a good feeling, then chances are it's not going to be a good feeling for your parent or grandparent. So There's small residential communities that assisted livings that only have up to 10 people. There's assisted community like ours, which is 62 apartments. So it's a larger size. There's communities that is a campus that has an independent or an assisted living or a memory care on the campus, which again, it suits what that person is. If you have somebody who maybe doesn't like to be around a lot of people, they get agitated, a smaller setting might be more comfortable for them. So, as I said, the family's best thing to do is ask a ton of questions, go look at all the places, feel comfortable, and then go back to the ones that you really felt, you felt good in, and check those out again and stuff. It's really hard for families to place their loved one anyway because they feel guilty. They feel like they're the kids letting their parents down, and sometimes you take on the hat of almost being a counselor to let them know it's okay. Your best interest is to keep them safe. And, that overrides your guilt. So sometimes just sitting down and listening to those families gives them a lot of more reassurance. And then all the education and resources that are out there for them, we share lots of resources to check this out, check out memory care if you feel that there might be an issue with them, wandering or leaving. Check out a skilled if you feel they're needing a lot of care, and make all of those judgments based on your true gut feeling.
Well, that's too perfect of a segue for my next question that I've been pondering how to ask, and that is that and Ralph, I'm going to fire this one at you. I'm hoping to be able to share some expertise on this. I suspect you get asked this question a lot, and that is basically when, as the adult child or the caretaker, I promised to never put my parents, in a home, or whatever verbiage that is that your family uses. And I feel so guilty doing so, but I'm in a situation where it has to happen. How do I deal with those feelings of guilt?
Yeah, that I hear that question a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and the promise question, we call it. And I actually made that promise to my mother. I would take her to memory care units with me, and we'd leave, and almost every time she'd say, "I hope you never put me in a place like that." And I would say, "I promise, Mom, I won't." And guess what? I had to break that promise. Our family did. And so that leaves the person with a lot of guilt. And I guess there's 4 things that I would recommend. First of all is, really be kind and gracious with yourself, and recognize that this is an action or a decision that's made out of love, for really with the best interest of your loved one in mind. It really is what's best for them. Shirley and Brian can tell you that I'm sure they see countless numbers of caregivers who are just absolutely wrecks, and they can't do it anymore. They just can't do it anymore. And the person, their loved one, is not getting the level of care that they need. It's not happening. So it really is the most loving decision to make for that person. But it's not unusual for that guilt to kick in, especially a few weeks or maybe a month or so after their loved one has been in the care community, and now they're rested, they're feeling better, and now they're thinking, why did I do that? And that's why it's important for them to take part in a support group, for example. And the Alzheimer's Association offers those at no cost to caregivers. And the person, the caregiver, can be caring for anyone with any kind of cognitive impairment or dementia. And they're able to take part with trained facilitators as well as other people who are on the journey. And that's incredibly beneficial.
And those support groups are all over town, and they're online as well. So
that's correct.
You can do them virtually.
Yeah, they're virtual, and we're moving back into some being in person. There's going to be one starting actually at the West Agewell Center in August. So we're moving back into in-person meetings.
Thank you.
But then, of course, a skilled therapist is absolutely essential, as well as having trusted friends and people who know and are familiar. And I hear this from caregivers all the time. They feel very isolated because they don't have anyone to talk to that empathizes or understands. So really seeking out those people to talk to that can listen and provide that empathy that one needs. But self-care for the caregiver is so essential. Statistically, 25 to 30% of caregivers are going to predecease the person with dementia that they're caring for. So, yeah.
Brian, I'd like to talk with you a little bit too. So when it comes to skilled care, well, actually, even when it comes to assisted living, if you could touch a little bit on payer sources. How do I pay for this? What are some of the things to consider as you're considering the right placement for your loved one?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, one of the greatest tools around is the Blue Book. I refer to it often, and it is overwhelming sometimes for folks when they're going through this. So I'll ask them if they have one. If they don't, I like to have them pull one out, maybe make some highlights in it. But from a costs perspective, inpatient rehab is something that's typically covered by your Medicare or your managed Medicare through an authorization process. And so when someone has a fall or has a stroke and then needs to go to the hospital, when they're leaving the hospital, we're usually working with the hospital case managers to get the qualifying means met to be able to make sure that that skilled inpatient rehab is covered. And in many cases where folks are 65 and older and have Medicare or have one of these managed plans, they get authorized, they get their 3 inpatient midnights, and that is covered for a number of days that is yet to be determined, sometimes by progress and non-progress during their stay.
Mm-hmm.
The clinical team, the therapy folks, all of the case managers at the insurance offices are working together to try to continue to motivate folks to continue to build their strength up so they can go home with home health and that point in time, like I said, sometimes it's 7 to 10 days and sometimes it can be up to 100 days. They do typically get 100 days of skilled services a year. Those rates for inpatient rehab, they can range anywhere from $495 up to $600+. So that's not something that typically folks can afford.
A day.
Yeah, it can be very challenging. And so, there are folks that sometimes don't even qualify with their insurances, and they'll private pay for, a few days just to be able to get that rehab to be able to go back to assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of assisted living is probably about half the cost of a long-term care stay. And so, folks are sometimes often motivated to want to get back to that assisted living atmosphere where their room and board is much more affordable. And then there's those, home health agencies that are kicking in after their stay, which are also covered by insurance. All of these determinations, whether someone's ready for assisted living or not sure if they need assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing, that comes down to folks being assessed. It's a very simple process. It usually takes about 20 to 30 minutes. Sometimes we'll throw a lunch in there to try to make it seem like it's a little less intrusive, but certainly that kind of qualifies folks. And
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the assessment aspect because I'm sure, Shirley, you guys do that often in your community. It's very key because you need to be assessed, the potential resident, the senior needs to be assessed by a professional, not from a loved one, because you look at through different glasses of what their level of care really is. Sometimes their needs are, sometimes their situation is overstated and sometimes it's understated, depending on the dynamics of the family, the family. So yeah, that assessment is important. Their communities can do assessments. There are third party, like a geriatric care manager that can do an assessment. There's all kinds of options out there. So seniorsbluebook.com, you can always check out the website and look for those services as well. But I tell you what, I am so grateful that all 3 of you are here and shared this wealth of information that you have. I am going to put up a slide towards the end here, and I'm going to give out your contact phone numbers and website addresses for our viewers in case they have further questions. But before I close, is there anything else that's popped into your head that you think we need to mention on the subject of when is it time for a senior care community? Is there anything I've overlooked?
So I don't know that you've overlooked this, but I provide free care consultations.
Mhm.
So if people want to just call me and just talk through whatever it is they're looking at, they're free to do that.
That's fantastic, Ralph. Thank you for that offer. Thank
I
you.
would also say that your local senior center is an incredible resource.
Yes,
We're very fortunate in this area to have some really wonderful senior center resources.
absolutely.
They are willing to help with anything and get you to the right person if you're trying to navigate something and it seems overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I'm sure our viewers will too. So on that note, I'm going to close and wish you all a great rest of your day. And thank you again sincerely for your time today. I appreciate your generosity.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good to
Nancy.
see you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you in the next edition. Take care. Bye-bye.